Barbados at the 5.5 down to 1% tax rate, according to the level of interest income that you've received. But of course, there's always a foreign tax credit available. So on the foreign tax that you might have suffered on that interest in your operating jurisdiction, you can take a credit for those taxes in Barbados. The only restriction on that credit is that you cannot reduce basically your tax to less than 1% of your assessable income. So you do need to pay some tax in Barbados. And again, because we have the OECD and the EU looking at us and tax landscape being so dynamic, you do want to pay tax somewhere. And of course, again, when you are remitting the dividends from your financing company back up to you, there's no withholding tax on those dividends. So, and again, in this case, you can use a society with restricted liability if you do want to have a checkable entity. The last one that we'll just take a look at very quickly is the captive insurance product. Here I chose to basically look at a situation where you may have investments across the globe, and either for regulatory purposes or just from a business perspective, you need to insure the risks of those global entities. This particular example gives you the use of a fronting company between your global subsidiaries and the Barbados entity that you're going to use to reinsure your risk. Now, the reason I've put a fronting company in here is because I'm thinking that you want to have the most efficiency possible. And in a lot of jurisdictions, we've noticed that if you are going to pay an insurance premium to a related captive, often that premium is not deductible. So if you use a fronting company, which could possibly have operations in the same jurisdictions as your global subsidiaries, you can then have deductibility of the insurance premiums that you're paying to that third-party fronting company. And then that fronting company can reinsure the risk with the Barbados captive. So we see that this is actually a very efficient structure, and of course, because you have the fronting company there, you have a captive that's insuring essentially third-party risk, and therefore subject to tax at 2%. And again, in a lot of cases, you may or may not be surprised to know that some people actually prefer this rather than a class 1 captive at 0%, because they do want to make sure that they're paying tax in a jurisdiction. And because Barbados is open for business, that's a jurisdiction that we choose. So that's pretty much it. I know it's a lot of information, but hopefully it gives you some food for thought in terms of why Barbados, being well regulated, being very transparent, but also being very agile as a small country in a really big world with a dynamic tax landscape, it really doesn't get any better. Thank you.